Content over everything.
You on now? All right, yes, me again, unfortunately. I know it looks like I've taken over COE. This is probably going to be the last video, hopefully, with me on, but I'll probably pop up again. Today, what we're going to, also I want to say big up to COE because it's his 1 year anniversary. And obviously he's been doing a great job around here and probably the most impartial. What we're talking about today is a very serious topic because a lot of times we're always arguing and debating. I'm guilty of this as well. I am a bit of a narcissist, so I do tend to fall into this trap. But we're going to be talking about depression. And the reason why I'm going to be talking about this specifically today is because it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And today's the last day. It started on the 14th. We should be really talking about this all year round. I am a big proponent of speaking about depression. I do give talks. I know I look a bit of a nitwit sometimes, but I do have a very serious side. And one of the things was that I was commenting on Twitter. Yeah, Twitter's taken over my life. And I heard Paul admit something that not a lot of men do, and which is that he suffered from depression. And when you hear that from another man, whether you agree with that person's ideology or not, it kind of shows a truthfulness to that, because one of the biggest killers of men between the age of 16 and 28 or 30 is suicide. And myself, we'll go into our journeys. I suffered from depression for around 13 years. I was an alcoholic. I don't drink now, 6 years. And I'm not depressed, but like an alcoholic, it never really goes away. You have to always be careful. I don't hang around with certain people like Ali Dawa because they send me to depression. So certain individuals, you keep away from if you know they trigger you a little bit. So he's one of them. And I'm going to let Paul kind of go on and tell me what his views are about men being so kind of pent up, and they don't like discussing this particular topic because it makes them look weak. And that's my particular reason why I didn't speak about it for 13 years, but now I'm very open. Do you agree with that stance, or would you have a different?
Yeah, I just want to commend you for opening this subject up at Speaker's Corner, because we're so emotionally illiterate down here that we use mental illness quite often as a weapon to discredit the other person. I've had that used against me recently when I've spoken out against the behaviour of Ali Dawa, for example, and on Twitter, and he's accused me of being mentally ill, and that's how criticism is dealt with in some quarters. But it's not that I have suffered depression. I do suffer from depression, and I'm on medication which I take, so that's carefully monitored by my GP, and it works. The medication pretty much works, more or less. But it's not a magic cure or anything. And the reasons for my depression are not really medical anyway. So all credit where credit's due for opening up this discussion.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing is that one of the biggest kind of taboos is for men is to not speak about this to other men. If that's the case, fair enough, I can understand, because I remember in the past when I tried to open up to friends and you'd mention something that's depressing you, they would like, geezer, we don't want to talk about this, let's just have a drink. And so one of the things is that there's an organisation called Mind, and they're a free organisation, and I went there 3 separate occasions over 3 years, and it's free, and they're non-judgmental, and it's nice to kind of let your emotions out to somebody you don't know. And I was a big skeptic of counselling. I thought it was complete bullshit. But now that I've done it, I think it's one of the best things to do. As long as you do it with somebody that you don't know, don't do it with a family member or anybody else. It has to be somebody impartial. Also, I didn't take tablets for those 13 years because I don't believe in taking tablets.
But I do now. Cozy up together.
But I do now because sometimes you do need that extra bit of a push. And so I've been taking tablets for 2 or 3 years, and I'm in a good place now, myself personally, but I do still find that men in general, especially here, I think there's a lot of people that are probably suffering from depression. This is why they're letting out their emotions and anger in this particular way. I mean, you got targeted by people for opening up about your depression. I've had the same as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had that because I'm gay, and some of the most vicious human beings I've ever met are Muslims, unfortunately. But I feel I can open up about it in England because I'm an Englishman and this is England, and I feel empowered by my culture, if you like, to actually be open. I'm not going to be persecuted by my community for coming out as gay. On the contrary, sometimes it's the other way around. But yeah, these issues, some of the Muslims down here are incredibly backward about and emotionally illiterate. And I don't know why that is, they just are. And but I choose to come here. It's not as if I have to come here, so I can't complain too much.
Because the thing is, the way I cope is my faith has helped. I also draw a lot, and I don't have no friends per se outside of Speaker's Corner. I've cut off a lot of people. That sounds very drastic, but I'm somebody that likes to spend a lot of time by myself. So, I used to drink a lot as well. I have to admit I had an alcohol problem. Nearly died once. I fell asleep and got hypothermia. And so I did stop 6 years ago. Best decision. One thing about Islam that is definitely true. All intoxicants are wrong. I've tried a few of them, and I know it does distort the brain. And when you've got depression, one of the problems is when you're drinking, you're putting a plaster over a wound that's not going to heal.
But see, I never had that. When I don't drink, and I haven't for many years, but I do that because, well, mainly because of Islamic reasons. But I actually don't miss it. This is the funny thing, that the Muslims don't need alcohol to chill out and have a good time. I've just discovered you can have a good time with your mates, and you don't need alcohol. It's the most amazing discovery. So, since I've discovered that, I look at people who drink a bit oddly. Why are you consuming this alcohol that's going to make your mind go fuddled, and you could get addicted to it? It's costing you a lot of money, and it could make you violent, and it could this, and could that. I really don't see it. I don't see the logic anymore of that, to be honest.
Let me explain why I used to do it, because I don't do it anymore, and I'm against it. I'm very anti-alcohol and intoxicants now.
Yep.
The reason I did it is every Friday night I could kind of release, and forget about things, being blind drunk. It would give you a kind of like what I said. It's like you got a big wound and you just put a little plaster on it, whereas it should be stitched up. And so all you're doing really is just like you're kind of putting the problems back, and you're not dealing with them. When I became sober, I had to face reality head on, and it's very scary to face reality head on, especially when your life's a bit of a mess. My life's in a good state now, but at the time I'd lost my job. I didn't know what to do. I was in a very depressed state. And so I did contemplate, suicide and all that kind of stuff. And I know people in the comments are going to go, oh, he's a weakling, this is why he's like that. No. The reason why I'm like this is because I've got through that and I'm stronger for it.
No, the irony is the people who are in touch with their emotions and talk openly about them, they're the strongest people, because you can't make them more vulnerable. They've already owned their vulnerability. Whereas men who are, in a kind of fragile, macho way, acting out their macho ego, these are not really solid people. And the problem with Hamid upon him, said many times, the strongest man is not him who gives vent to his anger, but who controls his anger. And there are various ways of dealing with your anger, by doing wudu and sitting down and lying. He takes anger and aggression very seriously.
Would you say that your faith helps you in your kind of battle? Because I would say it's a battle with depression, because you'd never really get over it. I know certain things like Ali Dawa triggers me, so I stay away from Ali Dawa. And so certain things I know that will annoy me, and certain people, and I have to be honest with you, I've been very ruthless in the way I've tried to combat it. I've cut out people that I've known for 20, 30 years, and I said, there's no point phoning me anymore. Because I know those people were like baggage to me, that were holding me back. And so it's worked for me. It may not work for everybody else, but that's what's worked for me.
I think what I've done the last month or so, when I've broken free of this tribal, club-like mentality that many Muslims have down here.
Welcome to the real world, Paul.
I know, it's lovely, the real world, I tell you. Because there is Islam with its official teaching. You have the Quran, you have the Sunnah, and you have the Sahaba and so on, and that's all fine. But there's the unwritten rule book I've discovered. And I never quite signed up to that, and I discovered it by bumping into it and making mistakes. So I violated a few of these unwritten rules, and I paid a price. But since then now, I've discovered there are decent human beings, believe it or not, down here who are not Muslims, like my Sikh friend here.
And can I just say something? I hated this guy
around
6 weeks ago. And he's actually a nice guy. Since he's been kind of ostracized, I've managed to be able to talk to him a bit like a human being. And he's actually a decent dude.
But this is it, you see. Once we break beyond our tribal conflicts or tribal riots, we actually discover that most of us are actually decent people on all sides. Now, there are some real extremist, evil people, and I just speak on this. I'm not going to name names, that wouldn't be fair, that I know down here. That I'm talking about Muslims here who should be locked up or kicked out or something. They're not. They shouldn't be here. There's just one or two or three of those people. I'm not going to say who they are. But people on the far right and people on the Muslim, most of them actually are sincere and good people in their own way. I don't agree with them all necessarily.
Do you think a lot of them have mental health issues? I've seen a lot of people, I've spoken to them, and I feel like they have a mental health issue, like anger and depression.
Yeah, I think anger.
And they're letting it out in a way that's
what you mean by mental health.
Not
I don't mean there's
productive.
psychiatric care. I think we've all got mental health issues in the sense, how do we cope with our anger? How do we cope with people who disagree with us, who say horrible things about our religion?
Can I just say something? When we're talking about mental health, we're not talking about people locked up in an asylum. Everybody at some point in their life will suffer from some kind of mental health issue. And so when we're talking about this, there should not be no stigma to it. Because it could happen to yourself, it could happen to your mum, it could be someone like your brother that you don't even know is like, pent up anger or very depressed, and you don't speak. So obviously, because it's good that this week was Mental Health Awareness Week, that we can at least speak about it, but it shouldn't just be for today. Like, it's ending today on the 20th, but I've known about it for a week, but no, I've not heard anyone speak about it at Speakers Corner.
I think what this place can make any mental health issues worse.
Yeah.
If you're Muslim, you come down here and you get caught up in the tribalism of it, you're going to start hating a whole range of people, because that's the dynamic of it. You're going to see these people as evil, these people as insincere, that's the buzzword, or these people are, and ditto for other faith groups as well. This doesn't help. This is not a healthy way of interacting with people. And I do this. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. I do this. But it's not a healthy thing to do.
Well, it depends on the person. For me, it's great. I like the hate. Not in a bad way, but I like to have heated discussions with people. I don't want to talk about EastEnders, what happened last night, and I'm not into that kind of stuff.
What's EastEnders?
Yeah,
What
so
is it?
I come to
Speak.
Speakers Corner, in a way it's therapeutic for me. Like, I like to talk to people about varying subjects. So other people, it's not going to be good for their mental health.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people here that come here and they look mentally deranged within a month. So, like almost psychotic. So you need to kind of figure out what is best for you. What is best for me is not going to be best for you, and what is best for you is not going to be best for me.
Yeah.
But do you think your faith per se do you think religion helps?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think to be a complete human being, to be a fulfilled human being, religion is absolutely key for mental health.
Yeah.
And I don't know how atheists cope, but I mean, there are some nice atheists down here, by the way. But I don't know how, because you need to have an integrated reality where the transcendent, where God is greater than you, and someone you can surrender to and look for guidance and help and so on. If we were just to go by our society, what would we do? What the Daily Mail says, or the BBC says, or Sky News. I mean, there's no overarching narrative or no moral code. There's no story by which we can live our lives that our society gives us anymore. There used to be in Britain, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It doesn't exist anymore. And now we go for individual freedom, which is a contentless, vacuous, meaningless thing. What does it mean? We're just an individual who just interacts with people. It doesn't give us meaning and value and so on.
I do agree with you in the sense that obviously I believe in God, and I think one of the downfalls of the West is going to be the lack of traditional values.
Absolutely.
And Christianity, not Islam. Sorry guys, let's get Christianity back. Islam as well, it has its place, but I think traditional values is very important. One of the things I'm going to talk about is going to be quite. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit touchy.
You're going to have us hugging each other in a
minute.
bit.
So the thing, we're going to be hugging each other in a bit. We might get married in a year's time. But the thing is, that is a joke.
Yeah, that is a joke.
The thing is, one of the things is that I believe one of the reasons I didn't go down the route of like suicide, because I believe in God.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I think a lot of people, if they don't believe in God and they don't have that, and I don't want it to go on a religious note, I'm just going, what happened to me? And so when I thought about, what is going to be on the next life or what's coming next, I didn't think it was going to be a blank slate. And I think a lot of people, if they're atheists, because they don't have that afterlife in their brain, they may find it an easier decision.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm vividly aware, as are all Muslims and many Christians and Sikhs clearly are, of that this is not the end of things. This life, there's more beyond this life, beyond death. There is a reality, and we'll be held to account. And there is either a place of blessing and repose and peace. There's also another place, a place of terror. And the Quran uses very vivid language to speak about that, as does Jesus in the Bible, and I don't doubt in your tradition as well. So yeah, that's been an issue for me. I mean, Shakespeare in Hamlet famously, Hamlet said in Shakespeare, to be or not to be. He's talking about whether or not to commit suicide. If you read it, to be or not to be. Should I kill myself or not? And then he goes on and says, well, actually, for fear of what may lie beyond this life, that he actually doesn't in the end kill himself. He's afraid of what may be in the undiscovered country, he calls it.
Yeah, and I want to say something positive. Is like, when you're in that, when you're depressed, you think you're in a black hole and there's no way out, and you can't see your kind of view of reality is distorted so much that I had this problem about thinking everyone's happy, but people are not happy. Most people are depressed like you. Some people just cover it more than you. And another thing is that once you realise that, you can start tackling your problems because you know other people are going through it. But one thing is that, if you told me 6 years ago I'd be in Speaker's Corner like, you know, disconfident talking to people. I've got a job I love. You know, I'm with my mum, and you know, I've been to LA, which I never thought I'd go, and I never thought that would happen. If I was to done what I wanted to do at some point in my life, and thought my life would never get better, you know, it did get better. So sometimes it's a cliche when you say to people things might get better. I'm not going to say they will get better. They might get better if you try, yeah, and persevere. Because if you just end it, then,
I agree.
I
mean,
you will never know.
Well, what you're saying also about traditional values is so important, because traditional values give you a framework by which to live. And traditional values are found in Sikhism, they're found in Judaism, Christianity, traditional Christianity, that is, not the liberal modernist Christianity which we see these days. Obviously in Islam and in many other cultures. And the West, as you say, is losing that in this kind of fetish for individual freedom and liberty, which has no content, has no meaning. So we do need the traditional values, and they're found in all the major religions. So in that sense, I don't care which religion promotes these, as long as we're doing it.
Are you kind of implying that because of the kind of downfall of traditional values, we know the downfall of traditional values in the West is happening.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's fallen, it's falling. And so marriage and getting married and having a family and the normal kind of norms of a man being a man. I think the reason why a lot of men are committing suicide more than women is obviously they don't talk as much, but also the role that men used to play for millennium is going. I'm against feminism. I'm sorry guys if I'm a woman. I'm talking about third wave feminism, where people are trying to make men into I don't want to say sissy boys, but they're trying to make them into, like, you know, almost like girls. So I think that might be one of the reasons why
the cameraman says women. They're making them into women.
We do love women though, but
well, not that much.
Men, I think are losing. The reason why there's such a high rate of suicide, they don't feel like they have the role they used to have.
It's so true. I completely agree with you. It's this third wave feminism, as you rightly call it, is what I'm against as well. I mean, there is such a thing as the real traditional man. He's the head of the family. I'm sorry. He's normally the breadwinner. He is the one who is the leader and has a certain dignity and so on, and authority and responsibility. And this has been watered down and attacked quite viciously by this sort of anti-sexist rhetoric, where men, you know, this toxic masculinity, which is basically an attack on men. And it really is poisonous, and that's one of the symptoms of our decline in the West. And I agree, traditional believers, and even traditional atheists, because there are some, need to come together and fight this.
I need to clarify, I'm saying third wave feminism, feminazis, because I've watched a lot of videos of men having conferences about depression and suicide, and you have women who are feminazis outside belittling the men going to these things and saying man up, or, you know, what you got to cry about, you're kind of, you know, you're the patriarchy. And so the thing is that, you know, men have a particular role, and this is some of the things I do agree with Islam. I think men have a particular role that is being kind of watered down, and men are now being told that, you know, being a man is wrong. I've heard of cases of little kids, little boys who are a little bit, when I was at school, boys were boisterous. They were chucking chairs about and stuff in my classroom. That's the way the boys were sometimes.
What kind of school you went to?
Yeah, but it happened once in a while,
Didn't happen in my school.
Now they're on, Ritalin and stuff like that. And anything that's masculine, the feminazis want to kind of water down. So a boisterous boy is now a problem, part of patriarchy. He's going to probably when he's older.
I agree that even if you're not religious and you're an atheist, you can still believe this, because if you believe in evolution, that man evolved. Obviously, men and women evolved differently, and men were the hunter-gatherers, and they protected the women. The women obviously had children; they had to have lots of children to ensure the survival of the group. So even on an evolutionary psychology basis, you have these clearly defined roles, and we are, on that view, the product of our evolutionary heritage, and we can't escape that simply by being in London and being cool about it. You know, but we are the imprint of our forebears on our DNA and our genetics. So even on a purely evolutionary perspective, I think it endorses the traditional religious perspective, and this third wave feminism is seeking to escape from the reality of not only evolutionary psychology but also of the traditional religious values.
It's causing a lot of distress.
In my humble opinion, you're not an atheist.
We're not just talking about.
Are you an atheist?
We're not just. Yeah, go on.
I can put on the mask.
You can come in if you want.
No,
you can join the conversation.
I made a point there about evolutionary psychology and how even as an atheist, you can endorse traditional values, the roles of men and women. How do you feel about what I've just said?
I had a question in my head. My question, you said about God can give like transcendentalism to man.
Give transcendent values, which are not just produced by our own thinking.
Yeah. So then, can women attain transcendent values?
Yeah, I mean people as human beings, men in the generic sense of men and women. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean. So if women want to try and be a breadwinner, they want to try and raise a family as they're the cornerstone, could they do that? If God
I'm talking about norm. I'm not talking about an absolute rule here. I'm saying, of course, there are circumstances. I mean, look at the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad, Khadijah. She was a businesswoman who was older than Muhammad. She earned the money, and she was a trader. She had economic and social power. And Muhammad was faithful to her for 25 years. Now, she was no subservient woman who walked 5 paces behind Muhammad. Yeah. She was a woman who had authority and power. So, but that's not the usual case. Usually women do have a role as mother, as bearing children and rearing them and looking after them.
But then haven't you got two things here? You've got evolution saying men have a particular role, and you have a religious view that says, no, women can be part of this.
No, again, it's not absolute. So I'm not saying that.
Which one would you promote? I think that's my question.
I would promote as a general policy the desirability of women to adopt the roles that nature/God has given them. Because in the West, the demographics in the West, as you might know, are absolutely in free fall.
1.6.
In Italy, in Germany, in this country, we as Westerners, we're not reproducing. Yeah. But why? Because of feminism. Because women want equal careers, the same lifestyle, and everything else as men. And of course, children get in the way. Yeah. How can you have children if you're going to be, up and thrusting young female executive? So what happens is that we don't have children, our population implodes. So we have to suck in huge numbers of immigrants. We're told, to actually make up for this deficit. Now, maybe we want to do that, but you see what's happened. If we were actually to reproduce our own, at sustainable levels, we wouldn't need to do that.
Yeah. We're going off a bit off topic, but I will say something that the UK, in terms of the demographics, most households are having like 1.6 children. Obviously, people are going to say, how did that 0.6 come? Don't worry, it's an average. It's not like some half human being. But when you're looking at other communities, like the Sikh community is having about 2 per household.
Really?
Yeah, and even that's gone down. Yeah, because my family had 6, but our demographics are going down as well. But the one demographics that is still constant is the Muslims. And the reason why it's constant is not because they're trying to take over. They're just doing the normal thing that humanity has done forever. And so they're getting married at a particular age, and they're having kids and a number of kids. And so we can't really blame the Muslims or the immigrants for doing what the white indigenous.
No, I'm not blaming Muslims for anything.
I know you're not, but I'm saying I hear it a lot when I'm talking to white people. They're kind of trying to take over. Yeah, we're going to go back to the depression thing, because the reason why it's relevant to this is that obviously we're not saying that women don't suffer from depression as well. They do, but what I'm going to talk about is the role that I think, society now, because men are being belittled and kind of their kind of worth is being belittled, I think, and they're not being seen in the same light, that kind of, negativity is causing men to kind of lose respect for themselves. And when you lose respect for yourself, you will then start to kind of not love life. And so this is why we have a disproportion between men killing themselves and women. I mean, it's a massive disproportion. So I don't want to say it's to do with feminism. It's not to do with feminism, but it has an effect, in my opinion.
And also, I would flag up the value of counselling.
We're going to get a lot of hate for this.
Oh, I don't know. You and I are both used to that. The value the value of counselling. I'm not in counselling now, but I was for some years, and it really was of enormous value. I do recommend it. I mean, go to GP and just say, look, I need help, and they can make appropriate referrals.
And this is from the biggest skeptic of counselling. I thought it was complete bullshit. I was told I had to go because my GP said you better go. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. I managed to get a lot of things that I couldn't talk to other people about. So remember, Mind is somebody, they've got a lot of offices, a lot of people don't know about them unless you search them. Just search them if you don't want to talk to somebody, and you can get help. And like I said, I mean, we'll kind of like end it on a good note, unless someone wants to join in.
Can I just say about Ritalin? Ritalin, you got that from America. In America, a lot of kids are given Ritalin. In this country, it's only kids with severe learning. Learning.
I'll be honest with you.
Like one in every.
I met a guy with ADHD, and he was telling me what he used to do in school. And to be honest with you, I'm 43. When I was at school, man, I'm telling you, boys are boys. Yeah, boys are boys. Yeah, chairs were flying around sometimes. It wasn't a big deal.
A boy carrying a pigeon, that's a boy being a boy.
Yeah. So what they're trying to do now is that if a boy is boisterous, like what some boys are, they're putting them on Ritalin, and they're kind of trying to subdue their natural nature to make. Here is what I've met a lot of kids. Because I don't want to go into detail, but I deal with a particular sector, and because I do talks and stuff, and I do artwork, I go to specific places where I've met kids, and they've been on Ritalin and stuff to control their temperament. And what I'm trying to say is that when you're trying to, like, a lot of women have taken control of like education, and so boys' behaviour, which was normal 20 years ago, is now seen as destructive. And so this is causing a new generation of boys that are on Ritalin or some kind of tablets, or being told that,
what do you do? I mean, do you actually force women to marry? Do you force women to go back into the...
I know, we're not saying that. We're just saying that when women start to put their particular criteria onto a man, and men behave in a particular way, and like with boys at school, when I was at school, it was boisterous as anything. No one was on Ritalin or any kind of tablets, and people were beating each other up sometimes. A big deal. And so now you have a schools which is like run by mainly females, and they're trying to control it in a female manner and make these boys into kind of like little, I don't want to say word sissy, which I've said it already, but into little kind of like little girls basically. But they're not, and this is why boys are committing suicide, I think, because they're not allowed to be now a man. And so when they're growing up at the 18, 19, and they're behaving like normal guys, you know, and they can't show their emotion and stuff, you know, and
aren't we, you know, you listened to, you watched anything by Jordan Peterson?
Loads.
One of the things he's actually said is
he's in the UK at the moment.
No,
Jordan Peterson.
He's gone back.
Yeah, he's gone back.
He was here.
The thing is, one of the things
he's so fashionable, isn't he? It's amazing.
But one of the things he actually said was that there's never been a time. There's never been a time like this. No, it always ends bad if I get into a camera. Right? No. It's never been. It's never. This is the first time when women have actually sort of had such a big role in the whole of society, where they've actually sort of broken away from the home and sort of broken away from the family and sort of have, you know, doing exactly the same job as men.
Can I just clarify something with the camera? Before, because people are going to say I'm a misogynist and I hate women. I've got 4 sisters. All my sisters have got degrees. 3 of them, I mean, and all of them work. All of them chose not to get married at a certain age if they didn't want to. So the thing is, I'm not a misogynist. Sikhs believe in equality, but there are certain kind of traditional values about, you know, seeing motherhood as sanctity and letting boys be boys, not how it is now, where boys are now like little girls now. You can't tell the difference. I've met some kids, and after parent, what is it? He's so quiet. Yeah. Like, it's like when I was.
Why ain't he bouncing off the walls?
He's like, what's he doing? So I'm not sure if he's drugged up or what. But you don't know anyone, and if that boy is boisterous, they're kind of like made to feel like, oh, he's a little brat or something.
Come take over everything from your belly.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to.
The State supporter would not blink an eyelash before executing me, and they wouldn't like you very much because you're not a Muslim.
And they wouldn't like me because
you're an
I'm an
atheist.
ex-Muslim.
And I'm a big troll as well.
Because of your hat or something, I don't know what.
What about him though? Look at his hat. Would he get away with that?
I don't know. These people are extremely dangerous, but I will reassure everyone, and I know this, many of us now know this, that the police and other agencies, quote unquote, are completely on top of these guys.
Finally.
They really are on top of them. We don't have to worry about that. The state